Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA, FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hey everyone, before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that we do talk a little bit about Maggie's segment in VHS 99. So if you haven't seen it yet, we will put the spoiler warning time codes in the show notes. So make sure to check it out if you don't want to have a couple things ruined. Thanks. And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Maggie Levin. She's a filmmaker whose debut feature film, My Valentine, was part of Hulu's Into the Dark series. She also served as second unit director and credit designer for Universal's The Black Phone. And her latest work is the segment Shredding from VHS 99, which is currently on Shudder. And we also hear she's a disco empress. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Oh my gosh, my formal title read out loud. I'm very honored. My self-appointed formal title.
Yes. Oh, I always love when whenever someone has like a website, I always go out to it to see what kind of like little factoid I could pull from it. And I saw that and I was like, I got to include that.
I really appreciate it. Last year I graduated myself from Disco Witch to Disco Empress.
Hell yeah.
I hear it's a very ambitious trajectory and there's a lot of studying involved. So it's incredible.
Thank you. I was just like, I'm getting older. I feel like we can upgrade it. I've been doing the witch thing since I was very small. Let's give it a boost.
I love that. Okay, but take us back to before when you might not even have been a disco witch. Take us back to the beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
That's a great question. I think that my formal introduction was Scream at a Slumber Party. Original Scream at a Slumber Party. Which is, I think, the optimal format for Scream. If you're going to get introduced to slashers, Pajama Party is kind of the way to go. And I did a lot of waking my mom up because I couldn't sleep after that because I thought Ghostface was everywhere. A lot of looking behind shower curtains and things. And then I kind of tiptoed around it. I would say my next big horror moment was actually the film we're about to talk about, Notwithstanding, which I think counts as a horror movie, but is technically a black comedy.
We'll get into that for sure.
Yeah. But when I was 16 and got dumped for the first time, really dumped for the first time, and was nursing a broken heart, I remember I decided to rent Seven, David Fincher's Seven. Again, not a formal horror movie, but very horrific.
Uh-huh.
And I just watched it all weekend, just over and over. It was part of like, instead of eating a tub of ice cream, I just self-abused with Seven. With
What's in the box?
Yeah, that's my horror origin story. And though I would say that so far the horror I've made is a lot more playful. I mean, Scream's pretty playful, but yeah.
It's not Seven.
No, nothing playful about Seven.
Wait, how old were you when that first breakup happened again?
I was 16.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's about when I went through my... Yeah, that's right. I would have done something similar when I went through my first breakup. Just, like, watch the bleakest shit you can possibly find.
Yeah, it just... I mean, I feel like I still don't understand why I didn't do, like, a sad record. I didn't do any sad journaling. I was just, like, mutilated body parts. And, like, it was a very weird choice. But it helped, you know. Wow. I came out of that weekend feeling different, for sure.
A new person.
I can only imagine.
Reborn.
Back to Scream really briefly. How old do you think you were when you saw that?
I think pretty young. Well, let's see. In the middle school, it was middle school for me. Okay. As was Very Bad Things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that your first, like, real horror movie, or had you seen, like, other stuff before that?
I had seen some other stuff, and I've seen some other stuff that I would consider that late 80s, mid 80s through early 90s children's movies were all pretty horrific. I know you guys have spoken about a lot of them on this podcast.
We sure have.
You know, there was a real darkness to children's content at that time.
Yes, we were not okay during that time period whatsoever. Like, good God. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and having worked on a script for this sequel to Labyrinth, I did a lot of deep diving in the past couple of years on, the darker Henson material, a lot of the darker puppetry of the 80s and 90s. It was pretty scary stuff. I would say also another one that really broke me was Neverending Story 2.
The sequel.
2?
Yes. Not the horse getting pulled into the swamp, which broke everyone's heart, and but the idea of, because in that movie he's using his memories, he's like sacrificing memories to climb some mountain. The movie's absurd.
Yes, it is absurd. I was like, have I seen that one? And the moment you said sacrifice memories, like, oh yes, that's right. I do remember the sequel.
Like, no one wanted kids to be kids anymore. Like, no, everyone was like, all right, kids, like, as soon as you can consume media, be confronted with the reality of the crushing reality of existence, and just welcome to adulthood immediately.
Definitely. And I also grew up in movies aside, I grew up in upstate New York, in Woodstock, New York, which is a fairly haunted place. You know, it is, every home is historic and it ranges from like, this is a little bit creepy, to like, there's definitely like shadow women running around in here. I think my mom is sitting over there, so I could consult her and be like, did I see ghosts when I was a kid? There was a real presence in Woodstock, New York.
I love that.
I've ended the conversation.
Now I just want to talk about living there instead of movies. So I'm like, reorient your questions, Mary Beth. You can't keep talking. You cannot talk about ghost stories and hear about the ghosts of Woodstock, New York.
It's not too far away from Amityville.
Yeah.
You know?
It's in like that area, like that tri-state area that's like kind of New England that's just fucking haunted. And it always looks like it's fall, even when it's summer. And there's just like a vibe that's just like kind of creepy, not like super scary, but weird. And it's the best.
There's something about like those old houses, because my parents live in a Victorian now, and it's a place where
instant haunted.
Instant haunted. Well, they did funerals. Oh, well, I'll get to the basement. They did funerals in like where their living room is now. Like that's where they presented the bodies. And then the basement there's a portion of the basement that I'm fairly certain those same bodies are probably buried in, because it's just dirt. It is just dirt down there. And it's like, you walk down there, it's like, this doesn't feel right.
I have a dirt basement in my home. I think actually the home that I selected to live in, my forever home, is an echo of one of the houses that I grew up in. And I'm married to a fellow horror filmmaker, and a gift for the completion of his movie that I did second unit on. Blumhouse installed a black phone in our dirt basement. So we have an extra creepy basement.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah. Also, when you pick it up, it auto dials Jason Blum's cell phone. No joke. Shit. Yes. So you can never pick up.
That's also terrifying. I'd be like, that's scarier than ghosts. Be like someone picks it
up. Direct line.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, wow. So you had like a spooky childhood. You lived in a spooky place. You saw Scream. Yes. Were you a scared kid? Did movies scare you at all when you were a little kid?
Oh, heavily. I definitely went through a long period of time. Actually, I kind of wore my whatever part of my brain out that could do them after that 7 experience, and had to take a long break, which was, I think, good cultural timing. So I certainly missed the Hostel Saw era. I have an idea of what they're about, but only an idea. And then my horror re-education came later when I had grown a spine again. But also there are things in there that I discounted for the longest time. I had like one of my dearest favorite rewatches. I mean, anything vampire, but like Near Dark, Lost Boys. I was consuming a lot of that, and then being like, well, that's not, it's not really horror unless we're doing Human Centipede.
Torture porn or bust.
Right. There's no other kind.
There's no divide, no boundaries.
But certainly getting into the horror filmmaking and becoming a part of the community, I'm like, I actually am a much bigger, more educated fan of horror than I even gave myself credit for until way later.
So you love it. So vampires are some of your favorites?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I am give me any vampire. I don't really care. I don't have a snobbish taste about it. I'll take the corny romance novel ones, and I'll take the vicious, I'll take the highbrow, let the right one in, and I'll give me Twilight 4 also. I'm there for all of it.
Hell yeah. Look, the resurgence of love for Twilight is hilarious to me, because I was a Twihard as a tween, so it just... Anyway, we won't go down that path, though. But, Maggie, do you still get scared now, watching horror movies?
I thought not. And then I saw Smile a couple weeks ago.
No way! Okay.
That was the first one for me in a while that I spent half the movie under my shirt.
There's some really good jump scares in that movie.
Yeah. And there is something about a distorted human face. Like, just the basic premise of that movie is very unsettling. And then, the jump scares in that movie are unbelievably effective. And I'm stoked about how well it's doing. I was like, this.
Me too.
This is great news for all of us.
Barbarian and Smile, for just the past month, oh my god, I'm so excited. Did you see Barbarian?
2022 is a really special year for horror. I haven't seen Barbarian yet, and it's the only one that I have. I've seen, normally every year I'm I've seen 3 movies 500 times, and this year I have seen almost everything except for Barbarian.
It'll be out soon on VOD at least.
Oh, that's right.
It's terrific.
It's so good.
Awesome.
It's so good.
I need to see it.
So do you remember Smile, but aside from Smile, do you remember the last film that truly terrified you?
Oh, prior to Smile, No, I did the early childhood version. What scared me in my adulthood? What is it called? House of the Devil?
The Ty West 70s one?
Yes, I think so.
With the little with the babysitter and the...
Yes. So as soon as... That's the one. And that's a 2009. I'm good with... Listen, if you've seen... Have you guys seen Shredding?
Oh,
Have you seen my segment?
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
great.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I find gore hilarious. I think, the more blood, the more... I would say probably my favorite horror movie is Green Room. And that's it's a mess. We're making a mess.
Yeah, that movie is a mess.
And I'll get the giggles when things are really gory. I just think there's something delightful about it. So once House of the Devil gets to, really messing people up, I'm like, this is fun. I'm having a good time. But the dread sequences, for me, and then I suppose, one prior to that is Sinister.
Oh, Sinister is
I watched it I know that this is audio, so I'm looking through my fingers. I'm turning the sound off. I confessed early in my relationship to him. I was like, listen, the first time I watched The Shining, I turned the sound off and I read the Wikipedia entry. And then actually another good one is Dr. Sleep. Even though most of the movie I was having a grand old time, but I went to a very small screening, a screening for me and one other person. And at one point in the movie, when was it? There was a dread sequence going on. I laid down on the floor so that I didn't have to watch. So yes, I still do get scared.
That's fantastic.
And
I love that.
Visceral reaction.
A really big body reaction to things. I don't scream, but I actively hide.
That's great. I love it when people have that kind of visceral reaction to horror movies, because when you're like a critic and whatnot, you've watched so many of them that it's those rare moments where smile that just can break that facade and remind you of why you got into horror. It's just so great.
Yeah.
So great.
I also love, one of the real gifts of working on Black Phone and then watching its editorial process and then watching it get screened for people. I sat in the back of many a screening and watched everyone jump at the first big jump scare and then get the giggles at themselves afterwards. Yep. That's one of my favorite things is the aftermath, the coda on the jump.
Yes. That's one of the best parts about seeing a really good jump scare movie in a movie theater is that sort of titter that happens afterwards as people are like, oh yeah, it's okay. It's okay to laugh at yourself after you've just jumped out of your skin.
Yeah. And that's what makes, I think that's one of the reasons why horror continues to do so beautifully in theaters is because it really is a fun collective experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most reactive audience I sat with for Black Phone was at Tribeca, where we had people actively screaming all the time. It was amazing. So there was, there were two, one on either side of me that were just anytime anything scary happened, it's great.
And I just saw Halloween Ends in theaters, and I have opinions about that movie, but regardless of my opinions about that movie, I saw it at a screening, an advanced screening, but there were people that were just fans there. And I haven't gone to the theater that wasn't a press screening in a while. And hearing people laugh and get excited. And there's a scene where, sorry, spoilers, Darcy, the mill girl from Joba has a cameo. And everyone was like, it's Darcy. And that was really cool. I don't know. So it's really cool to have those experiences to see how people react to things. Because I'm so used to having such a singular experience watching on my computer. So seeing everyone else's reactions is really cool.
Yeah, and a good cheer moment after. I would have loved to see Green Room in a theater because, by the time they make it, I was so stoked. I think also I saw Invisible Man. I went to the premiere for Invisible Man and I had a hard time for part of it. But then by the time we all made it to the end together, everybody was like, yeah, it was great.
That was the second to last movie I saw, because we did a double feature of that and The Lodge right before COVID hit.
It was that was my last movie in theaters for the longest time.
The longest time.
Me too.
Yeah. And now, of course, I don't remember what the first one back was. No, it's too many.
All right, so you mentioned shredding a little bit. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your segment in VHS 99?
Yeah. So, mind-blowing. It takes place in 1999. There's a quartet of high school pranksters who also happen to be a quote-unquote band. And, we're using the term band in loose air quotes. Mostly what they do is film their video series of causing general mayhem called Rack Fucks Shit Up. And they decide that their mission for episode 8 is that they're going to go into the condemned, burned down husk of a former underground music venue. And, they fuck around and they find out.
Fuck around and they find out.
Yeah. And also there's like a legend of the band that got trampled to death in the venue, whose name is Bitch Cat. And I wanted to do a thing where the villains got a hero treatment and vice versa. So we have it's a fun little switcheroo story. The people who look like villains are the good guys, and the people who look like heroes are very much the bad guys. And is the horror what happens to them, or is the horror how awful they are to each other? Take or leave.
It's a good question, which I also has like a little bit of connections to what we're going to talk about a little bit later too.
Yeah.
I want Bitch Cat to be a real band so bad. Well, I'm so sorry.
No, me too. Yeah, they also want to be a real band. Having done this a couple of times, making rock bands just for movies or pop stars just for movies is an area of expertise for me. It's the most fun. You get to go to they get to go to band camp together. It's a blast.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, because I know that your Into the Dark movie was also about a pop star. Is music really important to you? Because I'm definitely sensing this like rock and roll kind of punk vibe coming through.
Absolutely. I like to say in my formal bios and stuff that I have rock and roll roots. And part of that is my father is a bass player. And so I grew up very young going on pop and rock tours with him. And then, I really got started properly in filmmaking as a music video director. And then, of course, along the way, I've been a giant music fan myself. I've certainly dated a lot of musicians. So I've been in and around the music world in different ways, wearing many different hats. And it's where I've found that I have a lot of fun stories to tell. And also I always, when I'm making something, want to be able to bring as much lived authenticity to something, because I think I really care about that as a viewer. And it's important to me as a filmmaker to really, when you're gonna tell a story, you tell it right. Mm-hmm. So I'm able to do that in the world of music, I think pretty readily.
Hell yeah.
What's your music genre of choice?
Oh,
do you have one?
I like a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
I've been really into, since making Shredding, I've been really into proper like mid-90s Riot Grrrl stuff.
Hell yeah.
I've been on a Bikini Kill and an L7 and then a later day like Daisy and the Scouts has been big for me lately. There's a band out now called Girlwood. It's like, I love them. Check out the song I'm Your Dad. It's really good.
Oh, already sounds incredible.
Yeah. But throughout the years, I've done a lot of sort of alt rock, a St. Vincent, a Rufus Wainwright, a James Blake, and then all the way to, I had a big mindless self-indulgence phase, which if you've ever been to one of those shows are really nuts. The floor is covered in vomit, and it's gross.
Yeah. Oh man, I love music, and I when I came into like my own in terms of like the music that I still listen to today, it was definitely the alt rock of like the 90s with like the bands that have the weird ass names like Butthole Surfers, you know, and all of them. Like that was my music that like I was like, oh, music can be fun and exciting, and some of it can be a little bit out of the mainstream. Some of it can be queer, which I really love. Like just here for it.
Yeah, I think another things that like sort of changed the fabric of who I am, you know, Velvet Goldmine was a real moment for me. Immediately following Very Bad Things was actually my Velvet Goldmine moment, and I got deeply into like glam. I got to see Bowie, and then, you know, Beck's Midnight Vultures is probably like a peak album for me. And then, of course, I'm waving my Prince tattoo around, I had like a very heavy Prince phase that has never died. It's very, and, you know, I have my like tribute purple hair. It's, you know, it's a powerful influence on me.
Hell yeah. His music was so good.
Yeah.
But, we talked a lot about the music, but I want to hear also more about the design of some of the gore and some of the creatures. Yeah. I mean, skirt around. I'm trying to skirt around spoilers, but there's some. I don't want to not talk about like the practical effects in this because they're so good.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of that is, you know, gotta credit Patrick McGee and his studio and his people, who did just a phenomenal job. One of the things that is so special and so fun about getting invited to do a VHS movie is you just know that you're going to take your idea to an 11 or a 12 and really throw as much at the wall as you can. And you're going to be asked not to rein it in, but to push the boundaries as far as you can. And to me, I'm like, well, that means we're dropping full buckets of goo from the ceiling. And spoiler, that means that we're building meat kids out of their shredded body parts. Like,
love
you know, that's what I want to do. And we're going to do it practically. And I will say, like, with the exception of a couple of little tiny paint outs, 100% practical.
That's awesome.
Which is so fun. And that, I mean, it's a little daunting. You know, you're only going to get what, you know, we could only drop that bucket from the ceiling one time.
Right.
Did not have the time or the resources for a reset. And probably the messiest, wildest one was actually one of the bitch cats. Again, at this point, you're past spoilers in this episode. Sorry, guys.
We'll toss like a little spoiler warning, but it's out on Shudder by the time this episode drops. So like, you should watch it by now.
Go watch the movie. Also, maybe this will be enticing. One of the bitch cats does go down, and when we were melting her head, that was also a single take, and we had like we had myself, the DP, and the second AC all running. We ran 3 different cameras on it as Deirdre, the bitch cat, was like bent over on her side, and there's like 6 makeup people behind her just like pumping weird baking soda liquid through her face mask and literally melting it. It was so fun.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. Yeah. I love those moments when you see like how practical effects come to be. That is just, it's so cool.
Oh, I have great BTS also of Chris Carbonara, who's the trench coat kid, when he's getting his like torso peeled off. Again, there's like an army of 6 people to the side with huge blood syringes, just like pumping the blood out of his stomach. And then the 2 bitch cats who can hardly see because they're covered in their own makeup going like, ah! It turned out great.
That's so cool.
And that's why making horror movies is the best. It's so much fun.
That's my favorite thing.
I mean, I know it's a lot of like hard work, but it also kind of just like, it reminds me of being like a kid again and being able to do sort of like these wild ass things. I mean, I remember as a kid being able to play with like toys that had the Ghostbuster slime and whatnot. And just, I feel like movie making with practical effects is like, brings you back to that moment of just like, what can we add here? What can we do here? It's so cool.
Yeah. I think I was a pretty like tidy, I mean, a little cluttery kind of a kid, but I never liked to get my hands dirty. But as an adult, like there's something I really relate to that Marie Kondo quote. I love mess.
I love mess.
That's me.
And your job is to make mess, kind of ish, if you think about it, which is great.
Yeah. It's really something. I think I freak my friends out when I'm like, look at this part. They like slam his hand in a door and then it falls off. I'm like, yay!
And they're like, okay.
I don't know what it is. What's wrong with me? But I've said this about the VHS series before. I think that I can speak for the other directors when I say you really find out what kind of sicko you are when you're asked to make a VHS segment. They're really revealing.
I love that,
yeah,
though.
I can imagine. And this one feels so much like I 94 I think has like some really great segments, but this one feels I think it ties into your piece. It feels very punk rock and a little bit more sort of loosey goosey around the edges. Just sort of like, what can we throw out there and just sort of like be a punk about it? And I don't know. There's something really refreshing about this in this very long running series to have a very punkish feel to it.
Yeah, it definitely. We all had no idea what the other people were making. We were all sort of siloed off, and we didn't look at each other's scripts. We all met for the first time at the premiere at Toronto Film Festival, and so it was shocking to see how we had gone kind of thematically into similar areas. We all made horror comedies, which I don't think has ever happened in a VHS before, and they all have that kind of like brash, 99 attitude to them. There was a real bombastic. If you look at commercials from that period of time, or really any of the major mainstream content from that period of time, everybody was yelling.
Yep.
Really, everyone
had frosted tips and was like,
everyone's wearing like as many colors as possible and looks like they have had so much caffeine or a lot of cocaine. They're just like very awake, very aware of their surroundings.
Yeah. It was like Red Bull and Frosted Tips and screaming.
Frosted Tips, yes. Back when I had hair, I had Frosted Tips because I graduated from high school in 99. Like, so this like just felt like, yes, this is what 99 was like to me.
I'm so glad. I think one of my actresses said on a podcast recently, she was like, it feels like a love letter to elder millennials and Gen Xers, and I'm like, that's good. I feel very proud of that.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
And it is, we worked really hard in every capacity, in every department. Like I said, that authenticity is something that's really important to me as a filmmaker. So, from the body jewelry that Bitch Cat's wearing down to every single glitch on that film, which were handmade, in quotes, by my editor on a VHS recorder.
Oh, yeah.
We fought really hard to make sure that, if you pick apart every frame of this film, it is 99 era authentic. You will not find a smartphone tucked off somewhere. There's not a coffee cup.
No Starbucks mug on the set.
No.
Just goo. But
yeah.
Okay, so we've spoke about your horror history, Maggie, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
Boy, I brought the 1998 Black comedy directed by Peter Berg called Very Bad Things, starring Cameron Diaz, Christian Slater,
everyone from
John Favreau. The
Jeremy
cast is
Piven,
stacked.
yeah, everyone.
Daniel Stern.
Yes.
Yeah. So in Very Bad Things, a sex worker is killed during a bachelor party and the attendees turn on each other as the wedding approaches.
I like that the contemporary version is actually sex worker.
I did change that for this. I was like, I just don't like saying that word anymore. I just don't feel good about it. So I took creative liberties.
IMDb.
I took creative liberties.
It's amazing I just want to start out with thank you, Peter Berg, for Friday Night Lights. Changed my life in the opposite way that this changed my life. It's insane to me that this was his first movie.
This was his first.
I guess you grow a lot over the years.
Okay.
And, I'm being in the arena of like how hard it is to get your first feature made. I understand that like maybe sometimes you're just doing Well, you can do. I don't want to slag on the movie too much, but like, listen, this is hard through a 2022 lens. This movie is rough.
Yes, it sure as fuck is.
I had to turn off part of my brain, but we'll talk about that after we hear Maggie what your scarred for life story is.
But yes, let's take it back to when you first saw this movie. How old were you? How did you see this movie? Give us your horror story and give us your scene. I want to know why this movie is your scarred for life pick.
Again, middle school.
Yes.
Post Scream. I had I think 6th grade boyfriend. I'm sorry, fuzzy memory, but like I had a boyfriend in middle school, and again, air quotes on boyfriend. We broke up because I moved, and then I came back in the summer of 98. I came back to Woodstock, and Jeff Warner and I were like, we're going to go on our first ever proper date. But it's a proper date that our parents have to drive us to. We have to get driven.
Hell yeah.
We had to get driven to the mall. And I think, I'm not sure what this movie was rated, but our parents may have had to buy us the ticket. It's
rated R, so they probably did.
Okay. So my dad drove me and Jeff and bought the ticket. And, you know, I should have been thinking about, like, are we going to hold hands? Or, you know, other very early, very young first date things. And instead, this nightmare began unfolding in front of me. You know, the movie begins with one of the most horrific, gruesome, sudden deaths of somebody, and followed quickly by another one of the sex worker, right? So, and the movie is chock full of imagery that continues to haunt me to this day. So much so that there's an ending image. The last kill in the movie is something that I emulated. I did a tribute to in my Valentine. The last kill in my Valentine, second to last kill in my Valentine is the last kill, effectively, of Very Bad Things. And so we didn't hold hands this movie. We didn't kiss after this movie. Nobody was getting any base during this movie. We left. His dad picked us up, and we're just like standing next to each other like horrified little fish sticks. I get dropped off. I like run into my house. I never spoke to that boy again.
Oh no.
Because I couldn't deal with it. I was so upset and so scarred, so traumatized by this movie. I couldn't talk to him ever again. I'm really sorry, Jeff, if you're out there.
Jeff!
I ghosted you because of my movie trauma. It was not you. It was the movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was brutal.
That's one of the best stories I've ever heard on this podcast.
Uh-huh. And we've heard a lot.
I've heard a lot of stories, but that one, I don't think anyone has involved a first date in the 6th grade.
Poor Jeff.
Very dark. Like what? Okay.
It was marketed as a, you know, this is like, we're in the years of Something About Mary. I'm like, it's Cameron Diaz. I love her. Like, you know, it's Christian Slater. I hadn't seen Heathers at that point. I don't know what I had seen, but it felt safe.
So, like, what is there? Are there scenes in particular? I mean, there's a lot of scenes, but like scenes in particular that really stuck with you and that really traumatized you. Besides that, obviously that death. Yeah.
So the hook in the back of her neck is so
to
ruin it for everybody.
We're digging into spoilers.
The sex worker it's a bachelor party that's getting real rowdy, and they hire a sex worker, and he is one of the guys who's like banging her in the bathroom and bangs her into a towel hook on the wall. It goes into the back of her neck, and she's instantly dead. And then I think a security guard comes and like checks up on what's that racket up there. And then they kill him too.
Like
so quickly, man. Wow. Escalated.
Yeah. Also worth noting that it's the two people of color, that the first two people of color we've seen in this movie, bam, bam, dead. So, you know, we're not winning any friends here. And then the plan is we're going to get rid of the body. Anyway, I don't need to tell you the whole plot, but the images that have stuck with me were the first death. Then they decide to dismember both of these bodies, and I remember vividly the discussion and the image of the dismembered bodies reassembled on the ground because one or two of the guys are Jewish, and they're like, we can't bury the body in parts. This is a broad comedy.
You're in 6th grade on a date watching this with a young boy, had never probably done even kissing, and are just watching the most heteronormative, toxic masculinity movie of the entire I've ever fucking seen. Oh my God.
Just wretched. Just absolutely the worst pick. Yeah, and then the other image that really stuck with me is, Cameron, there's something about Mary Diaz, who's a cartoonish bridezilla in a very offensive way in this movie, picking up is it a hat rack or something?
It's like a hat rack or a coat rack, some kind of rack.
Yeah. Here's the thing, guys. I couldn't do a rewatch. I was like, if this does to me what it did to me then, I just revisited. I did a skim because I'm like, I can't reabsorb the psychic energy of this film a second time.
It's cursed. Oh my God, it's cursed.
It's understandable though. I mean, this story, man.
It's something.
Yeah. So her smashing that guy's face in with the bottom of the hat rack, just pounding that dude's head in, and it's if you see My Valentine, I use a mic stand and do a very similar kill because it really stuck with me. And it's a very yucky way to kill somebody in a movie.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
This movie is funny to me because I saw this. It came out in 98. So I saw it either sometime late 98 or probably early 99, whenever it came out on VHS. And I remember I'm 17, 18 at this time. I'm a horny little closeted queer kid that anytime there's something to do with sex, I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm going to see some male nudity in it. And so I remember going to Hollywood Video and renting a bunch of movies, and this was one of them, waiting until everyone in the house was asleep. I had a VCR in my room and popping the tape in and being like, okay, this is going to be a sex comedy. This is going to be, I'm going to see that. Yeah. And then getting to the scene and, you see Jeremy Piven's butt, and then it's all of a sudden everything goes to hell. And I remember going, oh, this is not what I signed up for. And
That's
honestly,
so sad on a different level. You're like, oh, cool butt. And then wrecked.
And then just absolute disturbing mayhem.
And I don't remember anything. I didn't remember anything else about this movie until I sat down to watch it last night. And as I was sitting there watching it, all of a sudden, little bits of flashes, especially the very end when Jon Favreau's character is holding the shovel and he's going to bash the head in on his friend as he's and he decides not to at the last minute. Right. But it's I'm watching this and there's just flashes of this. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember seeing this as a 17, 18-year-old and going, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You run into it occasionally now where people market a different movie than the one you go see. Our marketing department decides a bunch of things. But also, at the time, there were a lot of rompy sex comedies that were dark, but they were funny. And, this one, there's a terrific the Roger Ebert review is. Did you guys read that?
No, I haven't. I might have read it back in the day, but
Very Bad Things isn't a bad movie, just a reprehensible one. It presents as comedy things that are not amusing. If you think this movie is funny, that tells me things about you I don't want to know. It's true. And he goes on, to speak about the racism and a number of other things. But, the conclusion of the review is, I left the theater feeling sad and angry. And, I wasn't old enough to feel sad or angry. I just felt ugh, revulsion and fear.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so reading this now, and I have to admit, I did laugh rewatching this movie at a couple times. In particular, the scene that just really, like, the one scene in this movie that I think is actually really funny, but I have a very dark comedic sense of humor, is when they have the suitcases full of body parts and they're like, we cannot bury them like this. We have to reform the body. And they're sitting there trying to pick up body parts and like, I have an arm here. I have a mixed bag over here. I have the person's head. Like, it's just, it's so, my sense of humor is either very dark or it's also absurd. And this moment kind of captures both of those of like, it is so dark. Like, this is not supposed to be funny what they're doing, but it's also incredibly absurd. And I'm just sitting there going, I cannot believe Peter Berg thought in 1998, let's have a movie in which these big stars, or people that are going to be big stars or had been big stars, are going to reform two bodies in the desert and then bury them back in their respective suitcases. I'm like, what am I even watching right now?
Dude, yeah.
It's
and
absurd.
I gotta say, like, one of the reasons why I was excited to talk about this now in the context of having made a movie that is very much about let's rip all the body parts apart.
Well, I was thinking that too as I was watching this last night. I was like, oh.
Yeah, like, you can see how formative, even though I only saw it once and it absolutely terrorized me, it had a profound and important influence on my life that I now think, in my own version of it, I'm like, hilarious, gross, very funny. But, that's one of the joys of being a maker of horror, is like reliving all the stuff that fucked you up in a context that feels like happy and fun for you. And I'm well aware that, it's possible that some, poor 11, 12, 13-year-old gal is going to see this, maybe in her living room, on a date, I don't know, and have a equally messed up experience about it. And it also, like, brings to me, I've had a lot of talks over the past year of this sort of, when horror feels mean or when comedy feels mean-spirited, and like how you toe that line. And I think that there's certainly, even though I feel a lot of joy looking at what I made in Shredding, I think there is, it certainly was written to represent and was full of the kind of meanness of that period of time. It was we were a very powerful country. We had more money than God. Like, it's, and especially pre-Columbine and pre-9/11, nothing bad was happening to the U.S. And you see it in the, I'm sorry. Nothing bad was happening to white straight people in the US, I should specify. So I think the content and the things that were going on in culture had this, like, sort of power drunk nastiness to them.
Yeah.
Fuck,
that's so true though. Well, so I had not even actually heard of this movie until you suggested it, Maggie. So I was like, the fuck?
I'm shocked.
I was like, the fuck is this? And I was like, okay, it sounds like The Hangover, because this movie predates a lot of movies I have already seen. So I was excited to talk about this with you guys because I have a very different, like, viewpoint on it right now, because I'm like, this feels like such a it feels like I was like, it has to be satire, right? Like, I just felt so ridiculous that I was like, this is satirizing romantic comedies, and I feel like all these other movies that have come after it have wanted to emulate it but haven't hit that meanness. And I kind of loved how mean it was. This movie is vile. Like, when I say love, this movie is fucking vile. But I love how vile it is. And I think that might just be, like, where I'm at right now. And maybe because I'm also getting married, like, this is coming out, like, with less than a week before my wedding. And I'm just watching this. And I'm cackling. I'm just like, it's just so fucking funny. I am sitting here because, like, I don't watch a lot of, like, romantic comedies. And so this is the first time I've watched, like, since I've been engaged, like watch really a movie that has that kind of like romantic, like getting married plot. And I was dying. I was like, this is what I thought getting married was for the longest time. And my experience has been not that, obviously. But
good, that's great.
Yeah,
you're not killing Christian Slater with a hat rack.
I'm not crying about padded chairs, though my mom has been, so that's been fun. But this movie is just so, like, this is just like, whenever I thought about bachelor parties as a kid, and like when I was younger, I was like, oh, men are gonna go on their bachelor parties and do crazy shit. Like, this is the movie that I feel like started it. Is this the movie that started it? Because
yes.
It feels like it. And no wonder no one has topped it, because no one wants to be that fucking vile. And Peter Berg, congratulations. Yeah. That was repulsive.
Well,
why did I like it so much, though? Like, what's wrong with me?
Well, I mean, because weddings bring up a lot of stuff. I got married earlier this year. I have a lot of friends who've just gotten married.
Oh, you know.
They bring up all your shit, all your family shit. And there does become a kind of like, it does bring out everybody's most stressed, most monstrous, and there is an idea of like, nothing is gonna fuck with this day, you know. So
you've been planning it for so long that it's like he gets this moment. It's like
so much money,
nothing can go wrong because of all the money. You can't change it. I love that there's a repeating refrain in here where Cameron Diaz's character is like, "We are not canceling this wedding. We are not moving this wedding." As the bodies are starting to pile up, she's like, "We can't. We have things in stone. We have things paid for. We cannot move this." And it's
at all costs.
Yes,
we must get married on this day in this way. It doesn't matter if they have to kill somebody in the hallway in order to make it happen.
Terry, if you don't text me on my wedding day saying that you killed someone in the bathroom, then you can't come to my wedding.
Great. You want me to be on like some watch list?
Yeah.
I killed someone. That's not going to come up to be used against me. But okay. So Mary Beth, you talked about The Hangover, and that was the immediate frame of reference for this movie, even though this movie came out years earlier. I forget when The Hangover came out, but it was early 2000s? 2006?
2004 or 04.
Oh, 2006.
Yeah. That era of specific humor, of that humor.
But, misogyny core.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
But see, I think that's what's so interesting about this film.
The Hangover was 2009. You're shitting me.
Oh,
no,
wow.
Really?
9?
Oh.
Well,
what the fuck?
Kind of a bummer.
What is time?
That actually is
time?
kind of a bummer.
I'm like, oh, I thought we were doing a little better by then. Not so much. I mean, The Hangover is kinder than this, but...
It is, but I think what this movie does, though, is it kind of like, before this was even a subgenre of comedy that was very popular in the 2000s, like there's all these like boys trips where boys are going to go and do stuff and their boys are going to be bad, right? Like it's like that sort of like bad behavior type road trip, Wedding Crashers, that kind of stuff, where it's like boys will be boys, we're gonna go do all this shitty stuff, and you know, by the end of the movie everything's gonna be okay, and we're gonna get off scot-free no matter what kind of zaniness we experience. And this movie is like, no. And so that's what I think is so funny watching this in 2022 is the fact that like this core group of friends you will see repeated in The Hangover. Like we have Boyd, Christian Slater's character, who is like that sort of alpha male. He's gotten into self-help guruism, and he's like, you know, he wants to be the leader of the group. And you have Adam, played by Daniel Stern, who's sort of the milquetoast character who's already married, you know, kind of doesn't feel like he's part of the group. And Michael, Jeremy Piven's character, who's Adam's brother, who's also like, he has a chip on his shoulder, and, you know, his brother is married and has like this life and he doesn't. So he feels like minimized from that. But you have all these character tropes and more, the sort of like oddballish character played by Leland Orser. And you see these characters repeated in like The Hangover, particularly with like Jon Favreau's character being sort of like the everyman, the straight man, the character that's like all the shit's happening around him, and poor Jon Favreau's character, right? And I'm seeing this, and I'm watching The Hangover, and I'm thinking about The Hangover as I'm watching this, and I'm like, The Hangover has like all these wild things happen, but at the end of the day, you know that they're going to be okay. And this movie is like, no, this friend group that we sort of like see in cinema repeated throughout time of being like, this is what male friendship is like is actually quite toxic and misogynistic and homophobic and horrible. And I do like the way this movie sort of takes this sort of like buddy comedy beginning and then just sort of like picks it apart and says, no, these people are horrible. And in fact, the bridezilla in the beginning who says you need to drop these friends, it's not this woman that's being like, oh, I don't like your friends. No, this woman is like realizing your friends are horrible and you need to ditch them. Yeah. And so I think there's some interesting things at play here that kind of surprised me rewatching this in 2022.
I agree with that.
And there is also like, sorry, go ahead.
I agree with that because it just feels so extreme, so ridiculous, and taking those, like you said, those tropes and taking them to like the craziest shit. Like, I mean, again, like the bridezilla, which is always the misogynistic, like women are so crazy on your wedding day, and having her literally kill someone. Like, I'm obsessed with that, and like it's done in like obviously a terrible way, but it's like maybe it wasn't his intention, but looking at it as like kind of that just complete like tearing down of that format, even though the format didn't exist yet. Yeah. It's just, it's weird. It's fascinating.
But it also is, I mean, it did come after Swingers, which was kind of a big thing. And, you know, we were, I think, right on the heels of kind of My Best Friend's Wedding, things like that. So these things were definitely there to be satirized, and it's interesting that it laid some groundwork for perhaps less honest versions of later stuff. But there's something, I mean, it's interesting having this conversation now because not even realizing it, other things that I've gleaned from that period of time, and that, not to keep promoting the movie, but like that show up thematically in many of the segments of VHS 99 that maybe we were all kind of feeling at the time, is this idea of like, you know, this herd mentality, your pack of friends, if you just let yourself sort of be led blindly into danger and let the craziest, most cruel one among you call the shots.
Yes.
You could wind up in some pretty serious trouble.
Yeah. Like Boyd is a freaking sociopath. Like even before things start to go from like grim to worse, So watching this movie again, in 2022, I was like, I had two thoughts. One, I was like, this friend group is exhausting. There's that scene in the beginning when we're sort of getting introduced to all the characters and their dynamics, and they're driving out to Vegas in the car, and everyone is shouting at each other, and no one seems to like each other. And I'm like, this is like my nightmare, is like an introvert that just doesn't want to have any kind of interpersonal conflicts, and everyone is freaking shouting at each other. And then the other thought I had is like, straight men are so exhausting.
They always have been.
This whole movie, especially, and like that, to me, the straight men are exhausting thing is on display so fully in the murder scene / stripper scene, because good Lord, they're just all humping the air and like looking like they're gonna jerk off while their friend is getting a lap dance from this fucking poor sex worker who is just like, I just am trying to make some money for the night, you fucking creepazoid. It's like, leave me. It's like, and they're all just like salivating. And that's just like what we think of with bachelor parties. Like, and everyone's like, oh yes,
it's icky.
Your fiance's going to his bachelor party. And I was like, ew, not like that. And like, I watched this, and like, no wonder we all think bachelor parties are fucking foul. Like, no wonder we expect that. It's just, it's fucking the most like exhausting, straight, but also homoerotic, because there's the UFC fight on in the background, and then they start wrestling each other, and that's intercut with Jeremy Piven like throwing this poor sex worker around a bathroom and obviously killing her, but like, and also being like, my favorite white man thing, doesn't feel like work, does it? Like, isn't it fun? Like, oh yeah, like I'm better than all the other guys you fuck. Like, I'm a real guy. And it's just like, I want to rip off your penis. Just like, I can't handle you. And that's why at points I'm like, this is just so ridiculously 90s machismo. It's almost funny.
Yeah.
Because it's just so ridiculous.
It really, and it was the beginning of like a major wave of material that was kind of all in this, but like I It's okay. I think of it as being like kind of in relationship to The Man Show and The Game and like all of these things that were very much like just are the straight men okay? No, they have never been okay, and they like it's something that's wild to me. Just thinking about it is the tradition of the bachelor party being the night before or like immediately preceding your wedding. Mm-hmm. Having to show up at your own wedding with your life in shambles, even if it's just being like hungover and sweaty and disgusting. It's a strange thing. It's a strange thing to have all of your terrible childhood friends take you out to get you wrecked before you go like commit to a relationship. Why do we do that?
It's so weird. It's so weird. But I do think that this is where Peter Berg and particularly his cinematographer have like did a really good job of capturing this sort of sequence, because like you said, Mary Beth, you have the sex happening in the bathroom, but then you also have UFC, which again is a very homoerotic sport. When I watch it and they're like grappling and they're on the floor and they are in like a missionary sex position that a lot of gay men are doing, and they're in this position and they're holding each other and it's sweaty, and it's like this idea that men cannot be intimate with each other unless there's a threat of violence involved. And so we have that, and we have the people in the hotel room that are roughhousing, and they're like being more intimate with each other than they have been this entire movie, while the sex is actually happening in the bathroom. And they keep intercutting between all three to show like this sort of homosocial, homoerotic like undertone that is just there. And it just, I don't know. I was like, oh, you are trying to say something here about this friendship group and how there's like a connection between violence and sex and how men interact with each other and the only way that they can show intimacy with each other. And because there's a moment later on too where I keep calling in my head Christian Bale, Christian Slater's character just full on kisses, Jon Favreau's character. And it's like after this whole thing about
that.
He's like, there's love in this car. He has this whole like monologue. I actually wrote it down because it's like, what is happening here? Where he says they're contemplating like, what have we done? It's time to confess our sins. And he's like, well, that's the question we should be asking ourselves. What have we done? You want to know what we're doing here? You are love pumping, which I don't know what that means.
What?
He's like, you're protecting all that is sacred and beautiful and in sync with poetry and sunsets and little newborn babies. You're walking the walk. This is what it is, Fisher. You love this woman and nothing supersedes love. This car is full of love. You're going to do what it takes, whatever it takes. And then he kisses him on the lips. And it's like this moment, and I'm like, what is happening here?
That's really wild. Now I do want to thoroughly rewatch it.
It's really weird. It's weird. I was like, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it wasn't a fascinating, obviously flawed look at homoeroticism and the ways that men interact with each other, and men and like male feelings of not being able to be like emotional around each other without being absolutely
and how they're all coping with their friend getting married and what that means for their group dynamic or each other. Like,
also just like, I love every single fucking one of these movies is like, oh, women, and I'm like, why do we perpetuate these cycles when all it is like the most miserable thing? Because at one point Jeremy Piven's like, everything's going to change when you get married. Like, everything is going to be ruined, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what marriage? Wild. Like, that's just like what the model that I thought marriage was going to be like as a kid watching movies like this. And being like, oh, you're going to be miserable and everyone's going to think it's so funny. And now I'm actually getting married and I'm like, wait, this rules. Like, this actually isn't that bad. Like, it's just so interesting.
Listen, I'm a huge fan. I actually feel like a weird, like, religious zealot somehow when I talk about really loving being married and loving having gotten married. First of all, it feels like, I don't know, everything old is new again. It was so, the concept of marriage being the old ball and chain and being like this disgusting obligation that everybody has to go through. I don't personally get it because that's not been my experience. Like, it's been pretty tight, honestly.
Like, I've been with my partner for for 10 years before we're getting married. So it's also like, oh yeah, nothing's going to change. But it's like, he rules. Like, I like hanging out with him. Yeah. Like, it's going to, like, we get to do the same shit. I'm stoked. Why are all y'all, but
also, like, you could just not get married. Like, if you hate the idea of being married,
I just
like,
love
just
the
don't
idea of being married.
fucking do it.
Yeah. But like, what really?
No, I don't mean you. Yeah. I mean, like, the proverbial world.
Yeah.
That's the, everybody out there who is writing these movies of like, ugh, my wife, ugh, I'm getting married, yuck. Like, you don't get who told you had to? Exactly. I mean, probably your parents, but tell them to fuck off.
Cameron Diaz's character at the end talks about this. She's like, I've been waiting 27 years. I've been practicing 27 years to walk down that aisle. And it's like the pressure that I
will not be embarrassed. I will not be denied. I'm walking come hell or high water.
Like, the pressure that girls,
honestly, good for her.
Yeah, like that girls are put through at a young age to be thinking and planning and preparing for marriage. And then the men are just like, I'm sad. Like, I can't.
I guess I'll be there.
Like, I guess I'll be there.
Like, that's how they're portrayed.
Boop, boop, bop. And then it's just like the bumbling idiot men who are just like, I guess I'll just do it. And then the women who just like seem like hungry, scary monsters who literally have been told, if you don't get married, you're not a real person. And it's just like,
oh man.
Right? It's disgusting.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah. So it's just, woo, boy. It's a lot.
I'm trying to remember, for some reason, this is bringing back visceral memories of a reality show, where you, like, the women were competing to get extreme plastic surgery and the show was going to pay for their wedding. Did you ever?
Yes,
no, okay.
I did.
I'm going to do
I did. I remember this.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was on E or Bravo or something like that. What the heck was it called? But there was an incredible send-off when contestants would get kicked off the show. The host would say to them, your wedding will still go on. It just won't be perfect. I was like, man, if that doesn't say something about how we think about weddings. Oh, God, well, and like, so dark.
Well, and there also is this, like, crazy pressure for it to be perfect. Like, constantly, I was like, if it's not perfect, it's terrible. And it's like, again, in this movie, it's like, oh, they don't have the padded gold-covered chairs and the tent and these tent guys and just, like, and then, like, the poor, and then, you know, obviously she's supposed to be Bridezilla, but the poor woman who's, like, literally all you had to do was send the checks. Please, for the love of God. Just tell me you sent the checks. And he's just like, yeah, do. And it's just like, Jesus, it's just, oh my God.
I do have to give it up to Cameron Diaz, though, because she commits to the role so incredibly well. There's the moment where she is talking about the waiting 27 years and she is like, he is finally telling her all the shit that they've done. She's like telling her bridesmaids, 2 minutes, give me 2 fucking minutes right now. She's like trying to like dig into this with him. And the line, I laughed so hard when she's like, you and Moore are going to go and move those fucking bodies. Do you understand me? You're going to go bury Boyd with them. And in fact, you know what? You're going to put Moore in the ground with 2. And while you're at it, give her that fucking dog, because she is so sick of the dog that got bequeathed to them because their friend's untimely passing. And she just like, it's like this moment of like, I cannot believe that this is what I'm having to deal with right now. Yeah. Fuck you all. Go take care of this.
But see, and that's what's even more fucked up about the ending, though, because this ending is so fucking bleak. The ending is so dark. So it's like, at this point, one of them has been hit by a van and decimated. One of them has been shot and and then Boyd makes it look like he and the deceased brother's wife were having an affair, killed them. Boyd's killed. And then we have our Jon Favreau and his friend, his last remaining friend, get into a horrific car accident after burying the bodies. And Kip
gets ejected through the windshield into the other car's windshield.
I was like, good.
I mean, these are like wilder, more screwed up kills than you would find in a lot of traditional horror movies, where the whole point is like a big body count. This has this more than half of the cast is dead by the end of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And or maimed in absolutely horrific ways.
So it's like they have inherited the children.
Cool date movie.
Yeah, they've inherited the dog. They've inherited the 2 children of the parents who have died, and now the 2 guys are in wheelchairs, and she is now taking care of the children and the man children, who are now disabled, and she is just shown having a mental breakdown.
This woman who doesn't have a caretaking bone in her body.
No, not even. And it ends with her screaming in the middle of the street, just like the crushing reality of marriage upon her shoulders, and just like the reality of her scenario. And I'm like, so we just the end got me so badly because, like, okay, so we're just gonna punish. Now the woman is the one that's like fully being punished at the end, and like all she was trying to do was do what the world has been telling her to do, and now she is saddled with the responsibilities.
Isn't this crazy that this is the creator of Friday Night Lights, probably the only not like completely non-toxic portrayal of a heterosexual marriage on television ever, like. You know, like, the Taylors are like, you know, is there a better TV marriage? Right. No.
No.
Yeah, I guess he evolved his perspective.
I do think this ending has definitely, I don't know how well it was perceived at the time, but it definitely goes off like a wet fart in this, though, because it's like the final joke of the movie is that she's now having to deal with disabled people. Like, that is, I was like, oh, this is not great.
Yeah, it's 20 types of problematic. There's not a moment that goes by in this movie that isn't like, well, that's a problem. I mean, you could have one heck of a drinking game out of that.
Exactly.
How much of a problem? How many shots?
Because again, like the ending, like it makes it feel like, oh, that wasn't satire. Like, because I wanted it to be like, okay, cool. So we're just like all in on this fucked up joke and the way it ends, and I'm like, oh god, is this just icky boy humor? And I don't think there's I don't think there's one answer. I think this movie is a little bit more complicated than that, but it's very weird to have it be occupying this both seemingly fascinating space of like, oh yeah, like toxic masculinity, but then also ending on a, but women, am I right? And it's like, how did you do both? Like, I want to be impressed by that.
Or like, because everybody else sort of pays for their sins in one way, and it's her sin of caring too much about just this one thing that now that she pays for it with her in the rest of her existence in servitude to people that she doesn't know how to help, or too many people. I don't.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know that it's that deep, but I do want to say that what you said about Cameron Diaz is she's never not excellent, and you know, she really, I think she's retired from acting now, but I think she really gave us, I wouldn't put this at the top of her work. She did a good job.
She was really good at it.
Really good at it.
The Cameron Diaz collection from 96 through 2012 is really something, really worth a revisit. And it's what kind of drew me, I think, to select, like, yes, we'll go to this movie. It was like, I love her. She's great. So pretty, and she's always happy. And then in the
she movie, has such a great smile. No,
she does.
But you know, the one thing I was thinking as I was watching this, though, too, is like, this is obviously a work of fiction, because these men, if this was real life, would become Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah,
is what I was thinking. Right? Like, these men would get away with this in the real world, and become Brett Kavanaughs.
They wouldn't have the guilty mental breakdowns that they have in the movie.
No,
they would just be like, well, that was that, and we'll never speak of it again, because we're already bad at talking about our feelings. Why would we talk about the dark thing that happened to us in Vegas?
Exactly.
So quickly, before we wrap up, I do just want to touch on the one part of this movie that really fucked with me, which is when the security guard is dying and begging for his life.
Oh my
in
God.
That bathroom.
Please.
I was like, this is a lot for me, and I watch really fucked up shit, and this is a lot. Like, it's just a very long death scene of these 5 shitty white men listening to the black guy they stabbed dying in the bathroom, and they're just like all with varying reactions of like terror or like disgust, and it's just like, this is a horror movie. Like, that was the moment when I was like, this is a horror movie. Like, this is a torture porn Saw Hostel level shit of like hearing this guy like bleeding out in a bathroom, and Boyd just being like, he'll bleed out. I'm like, this is so disturbing. I can't, like, that part to me is like, I was like, all right, this is like a whole other animal of weirdness.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a truly dark. This is really making me feel justified, but this movie like ruined me.
Yeah,
because I did feel like the movie itself has a haunted, like a really disturbed quality to it, a viciousness and ruthlessness.
Yeah,
the kind of thing that we, you know, even the most mean-spirited content of now could not even touch this.
No, the way that Boyd immediately goes into when he is trying to problem solve this situation, and he refers to the sex worker as it at this point. It's like, we have to take care of it. This is a 105-pound problem. The way that the callous way that they are now talking about this poor person as if they're nothing more than just a paperweight is like, absolutely. And that's why I'm like, Peter Berg is doing something here and really digging into these sort of characters that we see in cinema that, like, in reality are actually absolutely horrible people. And so that's why I'm like, I have a hard time with this movie, because there are moments of it that I feel like he is really trying to say something. And then there are other moments where I'm like, I don't know about this dude.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe it is a commentary about in humanity. I don't know. I mean, the title does say it all.
It sure does.
Very bad things. Yeah.
Oh man.
So do we want to wrap up and give this one a rating out of 5?
Yes, let's do that.
All right, Terry, how many mixed up body parts out of 5 do you give Very Bad Things? How do we rate this? I don't know how to do it. I'm just gonna
on what scale? Yeah, what's the metric?
I don't.
On how fucked up it is? It's a
like
10.
A 10.
Yes, it is 2 full suitcases of body parts out of 10 in terms of like how fucked up it. I have a hard time with this because there are moments where I actually did laugh, and I thought this is really kind of a sharp, dark comedy. Because my favorite, again, comedy is that on the line of like, should I be laughing at this? I don't know if I should. And this movie does that incredibly well. But then there are aspects of it that I'm like, this makes me feel dirty in a way that I'm not enjoying. Like, I'm like, it's not making me feel great. And the ending, I kind of wish they had just left it with the accident and not added this other part about that gets kind of cringy. I mean, I don't know. I never want to see this movie again, I don't think. But it's also very well done in some cases. I don't know. 2.5 maybe, I guess. Because like there are some really good stuff in it, and then there's some like really bad stuff in it. So I think that's what I'm going to go with, because I honestly do not know. What about you, Mary Beth? Save me.
Yeah, I think like right in the middle is 2.5 for me, because I keep waffling with this. I can't tell if this is supposed to be a satire or I just think it is from a 2022 seat of having never seen it or heard of it before. I don't know how intentional it was. There's some really cool things going on here, and there's some really even more horrible things going on here, and I don't know. And it's very weird to see how this shaped a genre of movies that were very like not this and like way nicer, and it's very weird to see how this mean-spirited thing spawned this hilarious sex comedy subgenre. So that's very weird to me, and I'll have to do some noodling on that for a while. But yeah, I think 2.5 is probably the way. Yeah, Maggie, what about you?
Yeah.
Top for me.
Are we out of 10? Are we out of 10?
Out of 5.
Oh, okay. Well, it kind of ruined. It took something from me. So,
it did. Yeah,
I would say I would give it a half star, but or a half a suitcase of body parts,
a forearm.
But I'll just to say something again about the Roger Ebert review. He does say he says like Peter Berg, this movie shows that Peter Berg has a great movie in him. And I think that is kind of what you were speaking to, Terry, is like, there are moments in here that speak to a kind of higher ideal and lay the groundwork for somebody who has some important things to say and some great art to show us. And I will just, making movies myself, I'll say any movie that gets made is a miracle, and a lot goes into them, and who knows, like, what kind of good things this movie has brought to many people and to me. But the parts of me that it screwed up have contributed very positively to my career and what I have to say as an artist. So in that regard, to also 2.5 suitcases full of body parts. Thank you, Peter Berg. And I'm sorry, Jeff.
I'm sorry, Jeff. Seriously. Sorry, Jeff. Peter Berg, you took Jeff.
Yep.
But, I am curious what you just said. I'm like, I wonder what this movie would have looked like if he had a couple more movies under his belt, because he did go on to do some great stuff. But I'm wondering, this is a hard, ambitious movie to tackle as like your first movie. There's a lot of nuance here that I think maybe if he was a little bit older and wiser, maybe it would have been different. So I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird.
I read, just one more little tidbit. I read that there was a very similar, movie that came out same year on HBO, made for HBO, called Stag. And there was some like cross-checking of the legalities and whatnot. There was before Very Bad Things came out. And there's a very interesting Peter Berg quote about how it would be interesting to see 3 different directors. I think he lists off a couple people. Soderbergh is in there. To see 3 different directors take on exactly the same material. And I'm like, let's bring it back, guys. Let's do in 2028. Let's revisit the Bachelor Party Gone Awry concept.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Maggie, for joining us to talk about this movie and bringing back so many memories from when I was a teenager. Where can our listeners find you, and what are you able to talk about and plug? The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope everyone who's interested in the bodies hitting the floor or the wall or every space in the room will watch VHS 99. It's also just jam-packed full of good songs and good 90s nostalgia fun. It's on Shudder exclusively. And as for me, you can find me, I am at Maggie Levin on all of the platforms. I do have a TikTok, but there's nothing there. I'm more of a Twitter and an Instagram. I'm an old at this point. I love TikTok. I spend a lot of time there.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not making anything valuable.
Have you discovered the Taste the Biscuit on TikTok?
No. Oh, is this something I love? I love a new rabbit hole. There's this movie from the early 2000s called Chicken in the Shadow or something like that. And there's a song where these two, they're like older people. They were in some 70s band and they're doing a tour and they sing the song about taste the biscuit, taste the goodness of the biscuit. Yep. And everyone on TikTok has been doing that. And it is a rabbit hole that I have fallen down. And now my timeline is nothing, or For You page is nothing but TikTok videos of that song. I think you
wild.
Can tell what kind of gal I am that my TikTok page is still Spagliato with Prosecco.
Oh, I can't even discuss it. Yes. All I can think about is Emma Darcy. Oh,
like Emma Darcy.
Oh, they are just fuck me. Anyway, I can't get started on that because that's just been on a repeat loop in my head for a week now.
Oh, the minute I saw it, I was like, I'm married to this clip now. This is part of my marriage. I'm bringing this interview of Emma Darcy into my marriage.
Now, I want to watch House of the Dragon because of that fucking clip. So good for them because they did it. They got my ass. They did with a fucking Negroni.
Oh, it's well worth it. Negroni. Oh my God.
Now I want a Negroni.
Watch us both melt down about a Negroni.
With Prosecco and it was stunning. Stunning. Okay.
The stunning is really adds something. I'm turning, for your listeners at home, I'm turning bright red thinking about this phrase.
Stunning. Okay, so listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What's your...
As we all fan ourselves in the cover.
Got the vapors.
What's your experience with Very Bad Things or that incredible TikTok video that has us all under its spell? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, subscribe, and sign up to our Patreon.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children. Somebody please think of the children.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.